The girl's hand shook as she leveled the pistol, the barrel wobbling like a loose weather vane in the wind. Sunlight caught the steel, burning her small fingers red. She squinted against the dust, jaw clenched, chin high like she'd been born to stand in a doorway with nothing but a trigger between her and the world. "Are you going to hurt my mama, too?" Her voice cracked, but it carried. "She's dying." Elias Brand froze on the edge of his own yard. His boots ground gravel as he halted, hat shadowing his face. The cattle behind the corral stirred, ears twitching, uneasy with the storm of silence between the child and the man. The wind pushed grit through the air. It caught in Elias's beard, rasped against his teeth. He lifted his hands slow, palms bare to the sun, every motion measured. "No, girl," he said, voice low, ragged. "Not me." The pistol sagged, but she didn't lower it. She blinked through the heat, tears tracking pale streaks in cheeks smudged with trail dust. Her braids were fraying, a ribbon hung limp, dirt-stained. "She don't got much breath left," the girl pressed, her tone breaking sharp. "And if you're here to finish her, I'll—" She swallowed, tightened her grip on the pistol. "I'll shoot." A crow called from the cottonwoods by the dry creek. The sound cracked and far away. Elias glanced past her, toward the weathered wagon in the distance. Canvas hung half-collapsed, one wheel leaning wrong. A shape lay still beneath its shade, pale cloth fluttering faint against the dark. The girl's shadow wavered with the shaking of her hands. Elias's throat worked. "You're alone out here?" he asked. She hesitated, suspicion darting like a knife in her eyes. "Ain't nobody else. Just me. And her." Her breath hitched. Her knees trembled, but she stood rooted in the dirt. The rancher let his hands fall slowly to his sides. He stepped forward one pace. The pistol snapped up again. "One more step," she whispered. The cattle bawled, restless, hooves striking against the pen rails. The desert smelled of dry sage and iron dust, a taste sharp on the tongue. Elias studied the girl. Skin freckled, too thin, lips cracked. Hunger was written clear as scripture. Her dress hung loose on her shoulders, hem torn at the knees. "I won't harm you," he said. "Or your mama." The girl blinked, suspicion fighting with weariness. The pistol slipped lower in her grip. Her wrist buckled, arms weak. Finally, with a sharp sob, she let the iron drop. It struck the earth, heavy in the silence. Her knees followed. Elias strode forward then, the boards of the porch creaking under his boots as he crossed to her. He bent, scooped the pistol from the dirt, set it safe aside. The girl's shoulders shook. She wiped her eyes with fists too small to hide anything. "Show me," he said. She nodded, silent, and rose. Her steps dragged through the dust, leading him toward the wagon crouched under the sky like a dying beast. The nearer they came, the clearer the sound of breathing. Thin, ragged, hitching like wind caught in torn canvas. The woman beneath the shade lifted her head weakly. Her eyes, sunken, fever-bright, caught on Elias. "Clara," he muttered, voice breaking a name he hadn't spoken in years. Her lips curled faintly, though no strength followed it. "Didn't reckon it'd be you." The girl clutched her mama's hand tight, fierce, as though the bones might fly apart as she let go. "I told him not to hurt you," she whispered, stubborn, proud. Clara's gaze softened on her daughter, then flickered back to Elias. Her breath rattled, words thin as thread. "You still out here alone?" Elias crouched low, hat in his hands, dust rising around his knees. He studied the sickness in her face, the gray beneath her skin. He said nothing. The girl turned on him, fierce as a coyote cub. "She needs help. You got medicine? Food." Her chin lifted in defiance, but behind her eyes begged. Elias looked at Clara again. Time stretched, the desert holding its breath. At last he nodded. "Come on then." He rose, broad shoulders blotting the sun for a moment, and turned toward the ranch house that stood like a tired sentinel against the emptiness. The girl steadied her mama, helping her sit, then carried the weight of a woman too heavy for her years. Elias moved to lift her, but Clara flinched from his reach, pride still sharp even in weakness. He stepped back, jaw tight. Together, mother and child staggered toward the house. Elias pacing a step behind. Silent shadow, watching the horizon where dusk could always rise with riders. Inside, the air was cool and dim. Shutters cracked the thin slivers of light. The smell of leather and old wood pressed close. Elias set water on the table, tore bread from his stores. The girl seized it, tearing chunks with her teeth, cheeks wet. Clara lay on a cot, breath shallow, each exhale a tremor in her chest. Her eyes never left Elias. "You shouldn't have come," she rasped. He said nothing, only poured water into a cup and held it steady until she drank. The girl's voice broke the silence again. "She's gonna die, mister. I can't stop it. I thought maybe you could." Her plea hung in the air, fragile as glass. Elias leaned back, shadows cutting across the hollows of his face. His eyes, dark as old coals, fixed on the girl. "I can't turn back death," he said. His voice carried weight, low and final. "But I can keep harm from finding you. Both of you." The girl's fist balled, smudged with dirt and breadcrumbs. "Everybody says that. Then they leave." The desert wind groaned against the shutters, a sound like a long memory. Elias's gaze lingered on Clara, her chest rising shallow, her hand limp in her daughter's grip. Something unreadable stirred behind his eyes, as if the ground itself shifted under years of silence. The cough tore through the night like a knife in canvas. Clara doubled on the cot, her body shaking, hand clutching the sheet until her knuckles whitened. Sweat slicked her face, glistening in the lantern's flicker. "Breathe, Mama. Please, just breathe," and he whispered, pressing a damp cloth to her mother's brow. Her small arms trembled, her eyes wide and wet. From the corner, Elias poured liquid into a tin cup, bitter-smelling herbs steeped in boiled water. He crossed the room, his boots hollow on the floorboards. Clara's eyes fluttered open, glassy and sharp. "Don't give her hope," she rasped. "It'll cool your fever," Elias said, steady, holding the cup to her lips. She turned away, coughing harder, her chest rattling like stones in a tin pan. Annie reached, forcing the cup back. "Drink, Mama. You have to." Clara's lips touched the rim, trembling. She swallowed, the liquid sliding slow down her throat. Then she sagged, breath shallow, eyes closing again. Annie clung to her mother's hand, her voice thin. "She's not getting better." Elias stood over them, shadow broad against the wall, his jaw set tight, words caught behind his teeth. Outside, the wind whistled through cracks, carrying faint sounds of horses far off. Too many hooves to be passing strays. The rancher's head snapped toward the window. He moved, quiet, pulling back the curtain a finger's width. Dust rose faint on the horizon, low under the moonlight, drifting east toward the canyon trail. "Riders," he muttered. Annie's head jerked up. "Bandits." Elias didn't answer. He let the curtain fall, the house sinking back into shadows. He crossed the room, pulled a rifle from the wall. His hands knew the weight, though the barrel was cold with dust. Annie's voice was small. "Are they coming here?" His silence was enough. The girl squeezed her mama's hand, then rose, standing stiff, trembling. "If they do, I'll shoot him." Elias looked down at her, the pistol from earlier still on the shelf by the door. Her shoulders squared like she belonged to another century, another war. "You'll do no such thing," he said. But she didn't move, chin tilted, eyes blazing through the tears. The hoofbeats grew louder for a moment, then drifted, fading west. The sound thinned into the desert night. Elias's shoulders eased, though the lines of his face stayed carved deep. "Not tonight," he said, setting the rifle back. "But soon." Morning brought heat early, the sky pale and wide. Clara lay still, her breathing softer, weaker. Annie brushed her mother's hair from her face, lips pressed tight, then turned as a knock thudded at the door. Elias opened it. A ranch hand from town stood there, hat in hand, eyes darting. "They hit the McGraw place," the man said, voice shaking. "Took every last thing. Left them near dead." Elias's jaw flexed. "Harper?" The man nodded quick, glanced past Elias into the dim room where Annie stood like a shadow. Said they're riding through again soon. Folks are talking about leaving. Leaving won't save 'em, Elias said. The ranch hand swallowed hard. Jed Harper said he'll be tucking coin for protection. Any man says no, well, he trailed off, eyes wide with the memory. He tugged his hat lower. Best you keep your head down, Brand. They don't forget faces. He turned and left, spurs jangling faint down the path. Annie stepped closer, fists balled at her sides. What did he mean? Don't forget faces. Elias shut the door with a snap. His back stayed to her. Nothing you need to know. I do need to know, she pressed. If they come, I gotta be ready. You're a child, Elias said, voice iron. Your mama needs you, not a gun in your hands. Annie's lip quivered, but her eyes held steady. Mama needs both. Later in town, the saloon buzzed low. Voices hushed though whiskey burned throats all the same. Men leaned close, whispering, the Harper name slipping through the smoke like a curse. One old-timer slammed his glass down, pointing toward the corner where Elias sat alone, hat brim low. If he cared about this town, he'd stand up now. Don't matter what he buried. We all remember. The barkeep hushed him, glancing at Elias, who didn't move. His hands were steady around the untouched glass, eyes fixed on nothing, ears full of ghosts. Another man muttered, the Iron Hand, they called him that back in the war. They say he never missed, never blinked. Don't say it too loud, someone else warned. But the name lingered, curling like smoke. Elias rose at last, leaving coins on the counter, the floorboards groaning under his step. No one met his eyes as he passed. By dusk, Annie sat outside the house, carving clumsy lines in the dirt with a stick. Elias walked up, silent, a shadow against the burning sky. They're coming, aren't they? She asked, without looking up. He lowered himself onto the step beside her. Yes. Her small hand clenched around the stick until it snapped. She dropped it, staring out across the endless plain. Promise you won't leave, she whispered. The rancher's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon where the sun bled out, red fading to black. His silence stretched until the crickets began their song. At last, he said, I promise. The girl turned, eyes searching his face, finding the truth carved there deeper than the scars of his jaw. She nodded once, and for the first time leaned against him, small shoulder pressing against the weight of his arm. In the darkening sky, far off, dust rose again. The scream of a horse split the dawn, followed by gunfire. Elias jerked awake on the cot, boots still on, rifle already in his hands before his eyes cleared. Through the crack in the shutters, smoke curled from the horizon. Another ranch burning. Riders moved like shadows against the rising sun. Their shouts carried thin on the wind. Annie burst into the room, cheeks streaked with dirt. It's them. Mama says it's them. Clara's voice rasped from the other room, weak but fierce. You can't run. Elias. They'll hunt her same as they hunted yours. The rancher's grip tightened on the rifle. His jaw worked, teeth grinding, as if the weight of her words were stones he'd carried too long. He pushed past Annie, stepped onto the porch. Dust rose in the distance, riders sweeping the plain, torches flaring against the sky. The Harper gang. Elias's breath hissed through his teeth. Not yet, he muttered, though his hands trembled with something older than fear. Annie stood beside him, clutching the pistol again, her face pale but set. If you don't fight, they'll come for us. Her voice cracked. For Mama, the rifle lowered, his gaze snapping to hers. For a long moment he said nothing, the desert wind filling the silence. Then his eyes, dark, hollow, shifted back to the horizon. They'll come, he said, and when they do, I'll be waiting. That night, the air in town stank of smoke and blood. Survivors staggered through the streets, clothes torn, skin burned. A child wailed from a doorway, clutching a doll with one arm, her face streaked with soot. Elias walked among them, silent, Annie trailing close, eyes wide with horror. The saloon door swung open as a man stumbled out, shirt red, whispering hoarse. They cut down the Jensen boy, shot him where he stood, said this town belongs to Jed Harper now. Every head turned when Elias entered. The whispers began at once. He's still got the eye, they say. Buried his gun after Gettysburg. Buried it deep. Jed Harper won't stop till every man here bends or bleeds. Annie tugged Elias's sleeve, voice trembling but sharp. Why are they scared of you? The saloon fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. Elias set his hat on the bar, slow, deliberate. He poured whiskey into a glass, but his hand didn't shake. He drank, then spoke, his voice cutting through the smoke. They're scared because I once was worse than Harper. The words dropped heavy, the room holding its breath. I killed men from the shadows at Gettysburg, men who never saw me, never heard me. They call me the Iron Hand. And when the war ended, I kept killing, until the Harpers came. He stopped, throat tight. His eyes darkened like storm water. They burned my house, took my family, left me alive to choke on it. The glass shattered in his fist. Whiskey bled across the wood. Annie's voice wavered. So you know him? I know him, Elias said. Clara's voice echoed in his head. Her rasp, her plea. Protect Annie. Elias rose, every motion heavy as iron. He pushed through the doors into the night air, and the townsfolk followed like moss to flame. He walked out past the church, down the dirt road, to the twisted oak at the edge of the plain. There, half buried under stone and sand, lay the rifle. His rifle, the one he had sworn never to touch again. The crowd stopped short, breath tight in their throats. Annie stood closest, her hands balled into fists. Elias knelt, his fingers dug to the dirt, pulling loose rocks, scraping soil until steel glinted in the moonlight. He pulled the rifle free, long, heavy, scarred from years underground. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers again, the Iron Hand. God help the Harpers now. Elias ran a hand down the barrel, wiping dirt away, his face unreadable. He stood, cradling the weapon like a coffin lid lifted open. Annie stepped forward, voice fierce. Then you'll fight them? His eyes locked on hers. I'll fight. The rifle clicked as he worked the action, the sound sharp, final. The crowd scattered, half in fear, half in hope. The tale already spun itself in whispers, racing ahead of the dawn. Asterisk Elias Brand has dug up his gun. The Iron Hand rides again. Asterisk. At the ranch, Clara stirred weakly as Annie tucked the blanket around her. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her chest. Finally, her hand found Annie's cheek. Trembling, stay with him, Clara whispered, breath barely there. He'll keep you safe. Her eyes shifted toward the doorway, where Elias stood framed against the night, rifle slung across his shoulder. For a moment, her gaze softened, old memories stirring, but then the cough seized her and she slumped back. Annie clung to her mother, tears silent, hot. Elias turned away, stepping into the dark. Out on the plain, the wind carried dust across the moon, and far off, where the hills cut jagged against the sky, a line of torches flickered, riders gathering, drawing nearer. Elias set his boots into the earth, the rifle heavy in his grip, the air thick with ghosts. Jed Harper, he whispered to the night, it ends this time. The desert gave no answer but the howl of the wind, a sound like hoofbeats thundered down the main road, dust rising like smoke behind the riders. Doors slammed, shutters rattled. Townsfolk pressed flat to the walls of their homes. The Harper gang came grinning through the dust, rifles raised, eyes wild. At the far end of the street, Elias Brand stood alone, hat low, rifle steady across his arm, boots planted in the earth as if the whole town balanced on his shoulders. The gang slowed, seeing him there, a single figure in the silence. Jed Harper laughed loud, the sound scraping like metal on stone. Well, look here, boys, he shouted. A ghost come back to haunt us. Elias's voice carried clear, even against the wind. You've taken enough. Laughter rolled through the riders. A man fired into sky, the crack echoing off the empty saloon walls. Horses reared, dust swirling. Elias raised the rifle, not fast, not hurried, just steady. The first shot split the air, and the lead rider pitched backward, blood spraying the dust. Silence clamped down for a heartbeat, broken by the next shot, then the next. Men tumbled from their saddles. Horses screamed. Chaos swallowed the street. The townsfolk peered from windows, eyes wide, mouths open. Whispers hissed like fire, asterisk the iron hand. The iron hand, asterisk. Annie crouched in the shadow of the livery, her small hands working cartridges, fumbling them into the box. When the rifle cracked empty, she darted out, thrusting a handful toward Elias. He reloaded with calm precision, his jaw set like iron. "Stay back," he growled. But she didn't move, standing square beside him, chin high, though her knees shook. The Harpers regrouped, rifles blazing. Bullets ripped into the walls, shattering glass, kicking dirt into the air. Elias knelt, fired again, each shot clean, each man falling as if pulled by strings. Jed Harper dismounted, striding forward through the storm, gun in hand. His grin stretched cruel across his face. "You should have stayed buried, Brand. Should have died with your kin." Elias rose, rifle leveled, his eyes dark and steady. "You took them from me, but you won't take her." Jed laughed, lifting his revolver. "That girl? She'll watch you die same as the rest." The street fell into a hush, every sound drowned by the moment. Elias and Jed stood facing each other, the town between them holding its breath. The pistol lifted. The rifle fired. Jed staggered, clutching his shoulder, the shot tearing him sideways. His revolver fired wild, ricocheting off the church bell with a sharp clang. The gang wavered, fear breaking through their rage. More shots from Elias rang out, each one striking true, each one thinning their number. The townsfolk, emboldened, through open doors, rifles flashing from windows, pistols from porches. Smoke and fire filled the street, and the Harper gang buckled under it. Jed Harper, bleeding, staggered forward still, fury burning brighter than pain. He raised his revolver again, eyes locked on Elias, lips curled. "This end with you." Elias didn't flinch. His finger pulled smooth. The rifle barked once more. Jed dropped, face first into the dust, blood soaking the earth beneath him. His revolver clattered useless to the ground. Silence swept the street, broken only by the soft groans of dying men and the creak of horses fleeing. The gang was finished. Elias lowered the rifle. Smoke drifted from the barrel, curling up into the sky like the last of a prayer. Annie ran to him, small arms wrapping tight around his waist. He rested a hand on her shoulder, the weight of years fallen away in that single touch. From the doorway of the ranch house, Clara stood weak, her body trembling but upright. Her eyes met Elias's, a softness passing between them like the last light before dusk. She sank against the frame, breath shallow. That night, the battle ended. Clara slipped quietly into the dark. Annie wept against her, face pressed to her mother's chest until no breath came. Elias stood in the corner, hat in hand, his face carved with grief and silence. When dawn rose, the town gathered on the hill. The Harper dead laid out in rows, the dust washing red from the streets. The people looked to Elias, not as a stranger anymore, but as a man who had saved them, the man the old whispers named and the young would remember. Annie stood beside him, small hand gripping his, her eyes swollen but fierce. Elias lifted his gaze to the horizon, the desert stretching endless, unforgiving, alive with memory. His voice came low, steady. "She won't be alone." The wind picked up, carrying dust across the canyon, curling through the empty streets. And some said, for years after, that if you listened close, you could still hear the echo of a child's voice. "Asterisk, are you going to hurt my mama too?" Asterisk. And the answer of a lonely rancher who chose to heal instead of destroy.